Welcome to episode 51 of the Any Spartan Show. This episode, Josh, Sandy, and myself, or really Josh, talk about Fit Challenge, we talk about Spartan Super, Tough Mudder, Josh's eye infection, Shale Hill 24 Hours, the Ultra Beast in Quebec, and failing obstacles. Enjoy the show. If this is your first time listening to the show, thanks for checking us out. We record roughly weekly, and you get to listen to myself, Paul Jones, Sandy Ree, and Josh Chase chat about the obstacle course racing scene. We also do interviews with race directors and business owners in the OCR space. I encourage you to go and check out all of our other episodes over on podcast.anyspartans.com, and while you're there, subscribe to us. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere else you're going to find a podcast. You can also find us over on Facebook as the Any Spartan Show, and we really encourage you to leave questions in the comments that we answer every episode. Now let's get on with the show.
And we are live with episode 51 of the New England Spartan Show. Yay. My name is Josh, and I have Paul with me. Hi, Paul.
Hello.
And we have Sandy with us. Hi, Sandy.
Hello.
How is everybody today?
Doing very well.
Peachy today. It's Friday.
A little humid. But yes, it's
Friday.
And a fun weekend to look forward to.
Well, my fun weekend took a turn for the worst earlier this week. So, we'll get into the reviews, but we did fit obviously Saturday, but sometime around like Monday or Tuesday, I decided to develop these huge, like, my eyes look like I've been smoking things that are not legal.
Oh no.
So I have like huge puffy red eyes right now, and I believe I'm having what I thought it was pink eye originally because I woke up this morning and both my eyes were terrible. So yeah, I'm stuck wearing my glasses for a few days. No, so the doctor told me I had an allergic reaction to something, so I'm on steroids. So if I snap at anybody unexpectedly, I'm sorry. And
was it cow shit you were allergic to?
Well, so here's the thing.
It was Fit Challenge, not.
Yeah.
Allergic to Fit Challenge.
Not after the Super.
And no, and I think, to be honest, what it is, and again, we'll talk about this in the review, I think my body was so shocked by the ridiculous challenge that was Fit Challenge that I think my immune system probably packed its shit and left, and it was like, screw this, you're on your own. So, yeah, so I don't think going to Tough Mudder this weekend will be a great idea, especially with all of the underwater situations I'll have to be in, and I've never worn glasses to an obstacle course race, so sadly, I think I'm actually going to have to forego Tough Mudder, which stinks.
I need to pull up the map, Josh, because I don't know how many underwater things they're going to have, because King of the Swingers is not there. Electric Eel is just an inch of water, or 2 inches. Block Ness Monster might be the only real water that you have to, quote, go under, and even then, you don't have to go under on Block Ness if you slide in carefully.
I don't go under on anything that I can just stand in, So
you may not have any water if you want to change your mind.
It's true. I'll consider it, but I think medically, I think it might not be the best of ideas. We'll see. We'll see how
Understood.
If anything, I'm going Sunday, so we'll see how it goes. I don't know.
All right.
Take it easy.
But yeah, and I got a busy couple of weeks coming up, so I'm not in a necessary rush to beat myself up even further. So let's talk races, shall we?
Yes, we
shall.
Why
don't we
Actually,
talk races?
You shall, because you're the only one who's been doing anything.
All right.
Indeed.
Well, it's going to be...
It's the Josh show for a little bit.
Half an hour of me talking.
So, Josh, you take it away. Sandy, we'll be back in a bit, right?
Sure, right. I'm going to go get food.
Yeah, you guys put your headphones down, and I'll ride this cow all the way home. So, well, two things we want to talk about. So let's go back in time a little bit. So we had earlier in August, we had the Spartan Super come to Carter and Stevens Farm for what I believe is the last Spartan race that may be there. Is that fair to say?
I don't know.
We're hearing the rumors of that, but I don't know that any of it is completely substantiated yet.
No, I mean,
I think
Spahtens
it's all
hasn't
at
put
the
out their
rumor
calendar.
stage right now.
Yeah, Spartan hasn't put out their calendar. No one sees the contracts. So, who knows?
Who knows? So, for those that were there, Saturday was that ridiculously torrential, rainy Saturday that we had. So
can I just say, I live close to the race, and I was out driving around doing various things that day, and it was ridiculous. Or the day before, actually. It was ridiculously wet. Like, it was flash flooding in the middle of Fitchburg wet. I do not envy you guys.
Yeah, I was volunteering and just standing in it.
Oh.
It actually, and we all joke that these races have muds in there, mud runs and whatnot. But when you get down to it, if you're not racing competitively, I actually had a great time on Saturday because what else can you do? It's just literally pouring rain. The rain is hitting you so hard.
There's no way you can go.
What can you do? Yeah, what can you do besides just enjoy it? And the mud and the mud at Carter and Stevens is pretty well known. Like we saw it at Savage a month or so ago. But it's just usually pockets of mud. So you have the place in the woods where you go in and it's muddy and gross. The entire course was like 12 inches of solid mud everywhere you walked. Yeah, it was a muddy affair for sure. And, but I'll tell you, I really enjoyed the actual race itself. So they had, they did things a little bit different as far as organization. So we started in a pretty familiar spot down the road past the barn a little bit. But they've done things a bit different. So they threw the rope climb was out pretty early in the race. It was probably about 2 miles in, it's actually been that way the last couple of races. They did that in, Palmerton. They had an early rope climb, which was obviously added difficulty because it was just pouring rain out. They had the Herc hoist shortly thereafter that, and they did, the Herc hoist was in that first field. And the Herc hoist, as you can imagine, was the heaviest goddamn Herc hoist I've ever had to do. I put both my feet on the fence, grabbed the rope, and it just literally held me there, suspended in midair. I didn't move at all. It took every fiber of my being to get that Herc hoist moving. Because they were just soaking wet, those things. They had to be 130, 140 pounds if I had to guess. And then they did a sandbag carry down that little hill right next to it. That big open space at the beginning. And then, nothing new from Spartan typically, but, the race in general, I think was pretty well done. So Saturday again was a disgusting muddy mess. I saw Sandy at about the halfway mark of the course, just sitting there with her raincoat, just getting drenched.
Yeah, the raincoat did not help at all.
You didn't take your dry robe.
No, didn't occur to me. It was supposed to be 75. It was supposed to be raining, yes, but 75.
Have you managed to go to a race with inclement weather and remember your dry robe yet?
Once. Exactly one time have I remembered the dry robe.
Solid investments. Get a dry robe.
And the other 4 or 5 times I get there and I go, this one, it never even occurred to me to bring it. With 75-degree temps predicted, it never got close to 75, and I was freezing.
I threw it in the car the night before, and then was thankful to have it that day because I was just strutting about the festival area, pouring rain.
Yep. I saw photos.
Just like at Worlds, Sandy. I put the thing on, and Molly ran up to me and was like, "I can fit in this." And it's like, "Hey, look, it's a dry robe." So that helped, and then I brought it for fit this past weekend because it was supposed to rain, but it turned out to be a nice warm day, so we didn't really need it there. But yeah, it was.
You had it to leave in the car. So the next time we have a race, somebody the night before call me up or text me and say, Sandy, put your friggin' dry robe in the car.
Deal. Well, we can do that.
When we go to Canada, we're going to have a checklist, and the first thing on that checklist will be dry robes.
And the last thing on the checklist, dry robe.
Dry robes.
I'll start my bucket a month early and just set it out ready to go.
But what about all the races in between, Sandy?
Oh, I don't actually have that many races in between.
Oh, okay.
This is weird for me.
Well, Tough Mudder this weekend is going to be nice, so I don't think you'll need a dry robe. But pack it anyway. You never know.
It's going to rain.
Toss it in the car.
So, Super, was it good?
Super was good, and then Sunday we got a nice sunny day for it. It was 75, 80 degrees, but the mud was still there. It actually was a little harder to run on Sunday because the mud was a little more solid. So yeah, it was
harder to maneuver through, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was an 8 or 9 mile ankle check pretty much the entire race. So, you should have seen the Atlas carry by the end of the day. That stones were pretty much like 75% underground.
Oh
they
my
were all
God.
covered in mud. Yeah, it was a good time. And then obviously a good excuse to go up to the brewery. That was the first time I've ever actually gone to the brewery and had beers and barbecue up there. Yeah, I'd never been into that barn.
Whoa.
And they had some, well, not all of us live 5 minutes from the venue, Paul Jones.
Still go.
But no, they had some good beer. The barbecue was great. But yeah, I liked it.
The brewery's one of the main reasons to go.
I keep getting growlers. I think Vince is up to 4 growlers now from them. Because I keep forgetting to take the growlers back and refilling them. I just keep getting new ones.
I have an awful lot of growlers in my cabinet because of that.
That's why I try not to buy growlers, because I never remember them. Every time I stop by a brewery, it's just because I happen to be out. I never planned to go there, so.
Yeah, but you get more beer in a growler.
That's true. But you have to drink it quicker.
Yeah, you
That's
have
fine.
to drink it quicker because you
Not-
can't.
not a problem.
You can twist the cap back on, of course, but
That's the least of the problems.
Welcome to the New England Spartan Brew Show.
We're recording this one middle of the afternoon rather than nighttime, so I don't have any beer with me today. I feel a bit
5 o'clock somewhere, sir.
put off. I've still got work to do after this. It's one of those days.
Right, so how long did it end up being, Josh? Because their supers have been all over the map. Are they kind of coming back to a more regulated super length these days?
Yeah, I think it was 8.5 was the final count on distance, and then depending on how many times you slid back and forth on the course, it might have turned into 8.75. I don't know, but yeah, I think it was just over 8.5 or right around that mark. Right.
Well, that's a good length. I know for a while they were going a little crazy and getting longer and longer and longer, but it sounds like they're not doing that this year.
That was about my limit of hard, consistent runs. So I ran. Well, I did Sunday morning. I came and I volunteered in the morning. I did a course run through, and which was a fiasco in and of itself. And I wanted to run competitive, so I took my volunteer credit and I went over to the same day registration tent and I said, I'm going to use my volunteer credit. I'm going to run today, and if possible, I want to pay an upgrade to the competitive wave. And the girl's like, sure, that's no problem. It's like $25. So I go to register, and as she's registering me, she got like pulled away, and another staff member had to come in and fill in the meantime. So I take my band, I go line up in the competitive wave, and I run, and it turns out they actually registered me in open.
So you won the open.
But I didn't win the open. I was 4th in my age group, 14th overall. So it was a good day in open, but I would have had better results had I run competitive, but, I'll take them either way. So.
How did it compare to Savage, which is roughly the same distance, on the same venue?
Distance wise, it was pretty identical. So we ran most of the Savage track kind of backwards more than anything else.
Yeah.
What I will say too, it was a little funny seeing the Savage obstacles still there. So Colossus was still up.
Yep.
It was.
They said they didn't have it branded all the heck though. It was just black.
No, yeah, it was just painted black, and we were saying this the other day, Sandy. It would have been far smarter of them to paint it and brand it and at least put Savage Race on it more than anything else.
Yeah.
I was saying they should have put a coupon code for racers. That way they could
screenshot it from a passing GoPro. Awesome. I wonder if that's contractual. I wonder if Cutter and Stevens are allowed to show another brand's logos all over the place. Maybe.
I don't know. That was my guess too as to why they wouldn't have, because they tend to be pretty smart about their branding and marketing and such at Savage. Right. So chances are it wasn't their choice.
I'm glad to hear it was a hit. A couple of years ago, Spartan kind of peed me off by having a sprint and a super at Carter and Stevens Farm that when you overlaid the GPS maps, they were basically the exact same course, with like a 1 mile detour halfway around a carrier, something like that. So
that was like the 5.5 mile sprint year and the 7 mile super year. Like it was too much sprint and too little super for everybody.
And all they really did was move the start finish line further apart and add in a longer carry of some description. So I'm glad to hear they did a much better job. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked the course itself. And then, it was interesting running along, seeing you had Colossus was still there. You had that weird pipe obstacle, I think, was there and covered. And then you had Davy Jones's locker was still there. We didn't run right by it, but you could definitely see it across the field. So that was there. And then as you ran in that first field up top towards where the barn is, all the Savage Race lumber and everything was there. So if you looked in the woods, they had it like tucked away, and there was all the big walls and all the big construction pieces. So they left all their supplies there, it seems like, or as much as they could probably, which makes sense. I mean, Colossus has got to be $5,000 worth of bloody material and labor. So if you can take anything off the bottom line of that, that'll help save some money next year.
Well, and
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, from a volunteer standpoint, it was the most miserable volunteer experience I've had in a while, but that was simply because of the rain. And of course, Spartan has the same issue that every other race does, in that when it's rainy and miserable, the second shift volunteers just simply don't show up.
Yeah.
They say they're going to be there and then they don't get there. So Spartan came and got, we were scheduled from 6:30 a.m. until 1. And at about 10 till 1, they came and got the 3 people who were racing that afternoon and said, we'll be right back for the rest of you guys.
Mm-hmm.
1, 1:15, 1:30, 1:45, all came and went. And it was like, well, do we call on the radio? And all of us agreed that no, we didn't want to be that guy. And finally at 1:50, it was like, nope, I'm calling. It was like, hey, you guys ever coming to get us? I'll be there in 2 minutes. 20 minutes later, they showed up. So, it's one of those things where it's hard to blame Spartan because they do the same thing that everybody else does. And if they don't have anybody to bring out there, they don't have anybody to bring out there. But at the same time, it's very, very frustrating when you're freezing and you're soaking and, you
don't want to be there
just
anymore.
Kind of miserable. Yeah,
pretty much. You volunteered for a half day and you're stuck there for 12 hours.
An extra hour.
Yeah.
A little more than an extra hour. So, such is life, but it's one of those things where you have to be aware when you sign up.
That's volunteering.
Yep.
That's the nature of the beast.
Yep.
That's why I do the pre-course run. I show up at 5:30, I walk for a bit, and I'm done in an hour, and I get the same free race. It's great. The only problem is you just have to wake up at the ass crack of dawn to get there.
Yes.
It was, it's funny. This is the last thing I'll say. So I showed up for my pre-course run on Sunday, and Woody, and anybody who knows the Spartan Race staffers knows Woody, the short little guy, wears the big bicycle helmet pretty much all the time. Shows up, and he's a very eclectic individual. So he comes up to us and he goes, "Listen," he goes, "I don't care about the quality of the course. I don't care about putting signs back up." He's like, "I'll give you a few signs if there's any missing." He goes, "But the racers are just going to do whatever they want, and the runners are going to do what they want." He's like, "Just, make sure it's safe in general out there." He goes, "But don't worry about fixing anything." They looked like they had been up all night, and the place was just so soaked and wrecked, and mud was everywhere. And for the first time ever, I actually failed the slip wall the first time I tried to get up it. I fell off the rope and slid all the way back down. But like I said, it was, when it's pouring rain like that, you just have to embrace it. What else are you going to do? It was super fun. You're going to get soaked no matter what.
Yeah.
And it was easier to clean off afterwards.
In a
I
total
do have to say I was...
go on.
Sorry. I do have to say I was not upset and had no fear of missing out that day, standing there watching everybody else run it and go through that kind of muck and mud for 8.5 miles. All in all, I was like, yeah, I'm good.
Yep.
I thought the same thing from my house.
Yeah. Oh, actually, no, I did think of one last thing I'll throw in there. So one thing I did find interesting, I tore one of my calluses off during the day when it was raining, and I went over to the medical tent just to see if they could cover it, tape it up. And I walked in there, and the lady asked me, she goes, "Oh, did you hurt yourself on Twister?" Which is that new obstacle with the little, twisting pipe, the grips. So I said, "No, my callus has been coming off for a while, and it's just wet, and it fell off on the monkey bars, actually, at the very end of it." So she taped it up and whatever, and as she's repairing my hand, 2 or 3 other people are walking in, and as they walked in, the very first question the medics asked were, "Did you hurt yourself on Twister?" And I asked the lady, I was like, "Why are you guys asking everybody if they hurt themselves on Twister?" So I guess Spartan Race had asked the medics to get a running tally of how many people were coming in with injuries due to the new obstacle Twister. So it'll be interesting to see if they make adjustments to it, or I won't say they'll do away with it altogether, because they've got some pretty heavy videos and everything around it. But maybe some people are suffering at the hands of Twister. And it's if you haven't done it before, it's a pretty hard obstacle. It's probably one of their hardest obstacles to date. I mean, it probably is their hardest obstacle to date, that in Olympus, I think. So I wonder where next year we'll see Twister. Will it be built a little different? Will it be shorter? Will it be easier to grip? I don't know. It's interesting.
Okay.
Did they say what people were getting? Oh, go ahead.
No, they just said a lot of hand and ankle injuries. So people getting their hands caught in it, or people landing awkwardly from falling off of it. So it could be one of a couple things. I don't know.
Okay, that was one of my 2 questions or 2 comments, and that was, how were people hurting themselves? I wonder how much of that had to do with the fact that those bars were slick as could be because of the constant rain and everything. Because I talked to a couple people who said, monkey bars, things like that, they normally have no problems. They got on the very first handle and slipped right off. Oh yeah. One poor guy got all the way to the end, was reaching for the bell when he slipped off. It was like Twister
was early in the course, so it was on Saturday. It was damn near impossible. I got to the very last section, and my grip I couldn't hold on anymore. It was just, soaking wet steel. What are you going to do? You have to be Josh Grant if you want to grip your way through that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Shout out to Josh, by the way.
Yeah,
because he's amazing.
My hands are killing me. I started the Josh Grant grip training process yesterday, and the tendons in my wrists and knuckles are just wrecked, but I think that's a good thing. So the
other thing I wanted to say about Twisters, for those of you guys that want to give it a try, but don't want to wait until a Spartan race, Fitness Appeal in Lawrence, Mass. Victor just put one up. And so he's got one. You can go and practice. And my understanding is they have OCR classes on Saturday mornings and maybe a little bit of open gym time. So if you need to check it out, it's Fitness Appeal in Lawrence, Mass.
And if you show up with some NES gear
along
on,
with just about everything else there too.
And if you show up with NES gear on, you'll get a discount on your drop-in rate.
Yep.
That's true.
All right.
And all right, so let's talk more Sufferfests.
Yeah.
Fit challenge. So there are not a lot of words that I could use to describe what was my first fit challenge. So
it was your first fit challenge, so you don't know anything about it being the new venue versus the old venue, right? Other than what you heard?
Right. So a little level setting. So this was their first time venturing into central Connecticut. So Rob and team took Fit Challenge to Powder Ridge Ski Area, which is a modest ski hill. It's not a gigantic ski hill. It's only about 550 feet, I think it was, with the promise that it would not be man versus mountain. And he delivered on that. We'll more on that in a little bit. But yeah, so this was my first time venturing into the world of Fit Challenge. And as I said, 2 podcast episodes ago, that I was jumping in both feet first and going for
all the
multi-lap, 8 hours.
Yes, 8 hours.
So why the hell not, right? Why run it one time when you can run it as many times as you want? And I believe I made a prediction on that episode, and I should have gone back and listened, but I finished the day with 7 laps under my belt, and I will tell you, that course and his obstacles absolutely kicked the crap out of me. And here's what's different and what I kind of like about Fit Challenge. So for anybody that hasn't done it, or for folks that have done it, then obviously right? So the multi-lap wave essentially is an open wave, and there's no obstacle penalties. And from what I understand, that was the same as past events that he's hosted. So it was try the obstacle, and if you fail, it's you can try it again if you want, or you can move on. So the multi-lappers, for folks that are running, over and over again, I would try an obstacle, and if I would fail it, I would move on. I'm obviously going to have another chance at it later in the day. What I loved is they use a ton of natural obstacles. So lots of like taking down trees that they turn into, these weird climbing obstacles. So they had the very first obstacle, not counting a hill, was a cargo net over, a tree spun across, 2 other trees. So lots of rugged type stuff. And then he had one that was like a makeshift destroyer wall. It was 2 trees, and then one, probably about 4 feet above the other. So you jump up, grab the one tree that's hanging across, and then you have to pull yourself up over the second tree, which was deceptively hard because the trees had to be probably a solid 10 inches around. So it wasn't like a monkey bar where you get your whole hand around it. You get the top of your grips, and that's about it. And then a couple ladder walls made out of trees and things like that. So he packed 30 plus obstacles into this 3.5 mile course. But I'll tell you, not the most difficult, but the most draining one for me is the folks at Epic Hybrid Training. He had a partnership with there. They had this thing called the Epic Field, and it was after the rec bag carry. So you did a 200 meter rec bag carry, and you come down into this field, and the Epic training guys are there, and you had to do 10 sledgehammer hits on a tire. You had to go and prop your feet up on a fence and do 20 inverted push-ups, so like shoulder push-ups. After that, you had to go and do 5 tire flips, followed by 5 ball slams, followed by 5 tire flips back. It beat the crap out of you. So you went from rec bag carry to Epic Field, and then right after that, he followed it up with a rig. And the rig for the open waivers was, monkey bars to a ranger bar to monkey bars to a cargo net. So your arms are there's no forgiveness in the workout here. And then, oh, by the way, after the rig, here's the destroyer. So it's like, it was just this gauntlet of relentless upper body obstacles, which, when you think about a Spartan race, you'll do the monkey bars, but it'll be 2+ miles before you see, twister, or before you see bender or some other upper body obstacle. This was definitely the most upper body intense day. And that list of obstacles doesn't include the devil's staircase that you have to do. It doesn't include the hanging cargo net monkey bar setup, which is ridiculously difficult. And by the way, crammed into a couple serious climbs in there as well. So, he beat the crap out of us, and the people that did 1 lap got the crap beat out of them, and I got the crap beat out of myself for 7 laps.
Weren't there people doing 10 laps?
Yeah, so
3 people I think got 10.
3.
But now keep in mind a couple of things that. Well, first off, let me go back and say that the coordination with Epic Hybrid Training is a throwback to the original Fit Challenges, the first 3 or 4, because there were obstacles like that with the slams and the sledgehammer hits and the tire flips in previous years that we hadn't seen in a little while. So that was kind of a throwback to original days. And now I have no idea where I was going with the second half of that. So good for a podcast to not have a clue what I was going to say.
We'd edit it out, but we're not that professional.
Oh, I do remember now. True. Although Paul's the guru, he might be able to do it.
I could.
So
I won't.
It was laps with obstacles. And if you were doing the elite heat first, was it mandatory obstacle completion for the first lap? Or was elite not an option for multi-lappers?
No, so elites were forced obstacle completion. And then they had certain So on obstacles, there are different difficulty levels for obstacles. So like the Devil's Staircase or Devil's Ladder, whatever it's called. The elite side of it had like hanging ladders, where the other side were more solid, secured ladders. And the rig for the elites was much more difficult. The Destroyer, they didn't have any blocks on the bottom. They only had blocks at the top that they could use.
So they had that. And then for everyone that ran, the 6th lap was obstacle free, meaning you could just run the course. And then any lap started after 3 p.m. was obstacle free. So the guys who you got 7, the guys who got 8, were your 6 and 7 laps obstacle free where you just ran the course, or did you do them anyway?
Yeah, so actually the way that mine worked out, it actually worked out perfect. And it's funny because I had tried to plan it out this way in my head, and I'm like, yeah, it's great to say this, but making it actually happen will probably never work. So I did my first 3 laps. My first lap, I went out way too hard because my goal was to try and get one of his lap leader bibs that he gives out. But I didn't realize that he was also going to give those to the elite men. So there was no way I was getting one of them. I went out super hard in my first 2 laps. I did my first lap in like 50 minutes. So I finished the 3rd lap and I came in and I was just done. And some of the people probably saw me like laying on the ground in the fetal position, just completely exhausted. So threw back some Gatorade, ate some bananas and things like that. It took probably 20 minutes or so, after the 3rd lap. Then I went out and did laps 4 and 5. And, so what happened was when I finished 5, it was like, I think it was like 2:15-ish or so. And I said, this will be perfect. So I'm going to go out for lap 6. Lap 6 will be obstacle free. I will finish sometime in the 3 o'clock hour. So that means lap 7 will be obstacle free as well. Now here's the thing. Obstacle free sounds great, but when you're running through this course, you don't get a chance to breathe when you keep moving like that. So you go up the first hill, and when Rob was on the show a couple episodes ago and he described it, it was designed really well. So he had from the starting gate to the top of the first mountain, right? That was your first, it was just under a mile. It was, I would say 3/4 of a mile to 1/8 of a mile. It was bottom to top. So it was a climb. It wasn't too bad. There were a few parts that were steep. But it definitely wasn't like, Killington Death March steep. So you do that first thing, and then you have a nice kind of long jaunt down the side of the mountain. You're going down a fire road for most of it. And then you come out to the bottom and you have to do the rec bag carry. So on the obstacle free laps, you still had to do the carries. So if you think about it, you spend a half an hour not a half an hour, 20 minutes from bottom to the top of the hill, just marching as far as you can go. Then you spend 15, 20 minutes running down the hill, and my heart is like a bloody hummingbird, so I'm pumping it like 180 beats per minute. And then you get to the rec bag carry, which was not the lightest thing in the world. And then you go right back to a hill climb at the end. Oh, and there's a log carry after that as well. So the way he designed it for the multi-lappers, and maybe I should give him the credit that he designed it like this. Maybe he didn't know it. You had one climb at the very beginning of your lap, and one big climb at the very end. So for multi-lappers, you're doing a huge climb at the end. You're finishing. You're going back out on the course, and oh wait, now you have to do another climb. So your climbs were back to back throughout the day, which it made for a super challenge, and it made for you having to really plan out nutrition and hydration. One thing that I don't do well at all, because you're going to get beat up by these obstacle-free laps, and you're like, "This is great. I can run."
Sure,
but then,
in the middle.
Yeah, you're still exhausted. So, what I did is I came in for lap 6, and, I'll tell you, this group is amazing. So Nikki, Kelly Lynn Harder, Dan Parker, Janet, a bunch of them, and I'm going to miss a few of them, and I'm sorry that I did. So I came in after my 6th lap. I don't ever run with a shirt off, but I was so overheated that I had to take my jersey off. I was taking water like 4 and 5 at a time and pouring them over me because it was super warm. I came in about 3:40. I came in and I had 20 minutes to go out for one more lap. And I said, I'm going to use every bloody second of that 20 minutes to recuperate. So I'm there. I'm shivering. I have goosebumps. My lips are tingling. None of this is a good sign.
No.
So Dan is like, Josh, you really need to reconsider whether you should go out there or not. So I'm like, just give me some Gatorade, give me a banana and whatever. And,
I'll be fine.
So, yeah, I'll be fine. So, they actually walked with me. A bunch of them walked with me up the first, up the first climb just to make sure that I was okay, which I really appreciate. It was a really cool move. Cheryl was there too. Just to make sure that Cheryl ended up actually walking the entire last lap with me. Just to make sure that I wasn't going to get lost on a mountain, dehydrated and incapacitated somewhere.
In a ditch.
In a ditch, yeah. But, no, I mean, I loved the event. I actually really liked that venue. It was enough climb to be challenging, but enough course where you could run. My whole thing is I want a balance where if I have to spend time climbing, I want equal amounts of time running. And I think it was a perfect balance. And
good.
As far as vendors, he had a whole selection of vendors there. He had folks giving out Tailwind. It was super easy for the multi-lappers. You finish your lap, you walk over to a table, you tell them you're going out again. So I got my 7-lap block. I got my medal. I got my 7 pins. It was a great first experience. And, what I love about this is like you take the Ultra Beast, and when I looked at the mileage, so all in I did about 25 miles and change when you look at that day. And you compare that to an Ultra Beast in like Jersey, you do 1 lap, you hit your bin, you go back out, right? So you see your transition area once. Having the short course, seeing the transition area over and over again and seeing the same people and having them like high five you when you come across the finish line and they're like, what lap is this for you? 5, sweet. You get high fives from people. It's a cool way to do it. And being able to see the same people over and over again and seeing the lap leaders out there. I think Josh Fiore lapped me twice out there. But just seeing them out there and running into the same people over and over again is a really cool way to do, a distance and endurance event. So I'm psyched to see what he has in the hopper for the next event in April. And, and I'll certainly be there again. If he's going back to Powder Ridge, which I think he is next year, I'll definitely be there because I loved it. It was a great first time experience. And,
it only took you 9 races to do it.
9 races. So, yeah. But from what I heard about everything about Diamond Hill, maybe it was the perfect time to finally start going a bit. So, but yeah,
but that's a big difference between how the big endurance events do it and how the local guys do it. I mean, even if you look at Shale Hill, they've got the 24 hours coming up. We'll talk about that at the end, but it's 10K laps and it's 24 hours, as many laps as you want. So people always think, oh, I'm going to be on a course for 24 hours. You're not. You do a lap, you hang out, you rehydrate, you hang out with your buddies, you go to another, you go out with different people. It's a really cool way to do it.
Yeah. And you can be on the course for 24 hours if you wish, because there are some that can do that.
Yeah.
Keyword being there can.
Maybe
Not
2
all
or 3
of us are
people
capable
for
of
every
doing
100 who show up.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad you had a good first fit. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a team that we all know. It's, you got Steve out there, you got Farb out there, Jen Lee was out there. So it's good, obviously, to see all the locals, and they're always, how was the course? Do you like it? Is there anything else that you would change? So it's
right.
It's a good group of people that runs it. But
even despite all those people, it's still a good race, right?
In spite of those people, yes, it's still a great race. But like I said, I can't wait to see what he's got in the back of his mind for next year. And I'll be there. I'll be there no matter what. So
let's talk about something.
It makes you wonder how much can he keep changing.
That's
you do 9 events. That's a lot.
Don't challenge him.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that as a challenge. I'm saying that as a realistic thing, is how much, you can change the order of the obstacles, you can change the order of the course and stuff, but his obstacles are really cool, and I personally don't mind seeing them over and over and over again.
If you look back to his first race, and this is 9th race, they're 2 totally different events.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason that happens is because after every race, they sit down and they say, so what worked and what didn't work? And just very, very, each race is just a little evolution over the last one. So if you look at race 7 to 8, the difference isn't that big, but you look at race 3 to 9, the difference is huge. So it's just lots of little iterations after every event. So you may not see them if you go to every event, but, because you get used to it. But when you look back, they change.
I'll tell you though, man, you see and this was obviously, I'd consider this a modestly sized event with the move and the new venue and everything for him, but 233 multi-lappers.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
That's a huge, he's obviously found a sweet spot for the multi-lappers, and, it's a great way to get people sort of on your course for the day and get people into, it's not a new event for them, but it's a new type of race for them, really. Sure. So most people, it's one lap, you hang out and you're done. So this is something totally different for people. And, he was there, Rob was there at the end of the day, busting out blocks, like nail gunning numbers to it. He's like, what do you need? You need a 7-lapper? Boom, boom, boom. Here you go. So yeah, he had 3 10-lap finishers. He had a handful of 9s. He had a handful of 8s. A pretty big chunk of 7s, and I think the average was 4 or 5. Most people had to be 4 or 5 laps, which is great because we looked at the stats from the last one, and most people did 3 laps. So people are enjoying the race and pushing out further, and it'll be a good time next year for sure.
That's awesome.
We see that looking at race local numbers as well, because that's a big driver. Is the more laps you do, the more points you get, the more swag you earn, and that's a huge thing. And you look at race local, you see a lot more people with a lot more points. So let's talk about something new. So there was an article today on the Advocate from I guess Baton Rouge down in Florida, Louisiana. Thank you. So there are 5 people being arrested because of an obstacle failure at Warrior Dash.
Yeah, 2 contractors and 3 management company employees.
So if you didn't hear, this was last year. I forget what the obstacle's called, but it's a giant wooden frame that's kind of like a humpback that you have to climb over. And it collapsed while it was full of people. And I don't know how... Diesel Dome, is that what it's called? Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many people were on it. It was a lot. It wasn't 2 or 3 people. It was 20, 30 people. And some of them got seriously hurt. No fatalities that I know of, but some people got really hurt. And they've been doing an investigation ever since into not only Warrior Dash and their emergency response and their the way they acted to it, but also the contractors who built the thing in the first place. And they've come out at the end of this investigation and said that they were at fault. Both the construction company who built it and Warrior Dash for how they responded to it. And as a result, 5 people have been arrested. And some of them don't even work for Warrior Dash anymore, or Red Frog Events, the parent
I don't
company.
know that any of them work for... And I know the 2 construction companies, neither one of them was licensed in the state of Louisiana.
Yeah, that was one of the
so
pieces.
So that was part of the arrest warrant. They're all expected to turn themselves in.
So, I mean, this is a bigger issue for the OCR space, because we've all said that it's gonna take an incident to cause change in OCR, whether that's more money spent on obstacles, which increases ticket pricing, or whether it's an insurance change. But we've never had an obstacle of this kind of size collapse and injure people. And we've certainly never had an investigation come out at the end and say, you guys were at fault for this. There is no, you signed a waiver here. These guys built an obstacle that wasn't safe.
Right.
And we've seen unsafe obstacles at other races, other brands. Some of them are no more, but never like this.
This is it's a scary precedent to set in not only, I don't want to speak to any other industry, but we've seen obstacles fail, we've seen people get injured, and nothing comes of it on an individual basis, right? It's not like Joe DeSena is getting arrested and put in handcuffs because somebody belly flopped off of an obstacle and broke their neck. So it's interesting to see. I mean, they have like a 24, a 25, a 27-year-old on this list of individuals where they issued an actual warrant for arrest because of negligence. Usually it's, all right, the company is negligent, right? And it's the entity itself that has to either pay up or pay insurance or whatever it is. So this is it's a little bit of a scary precedent to set that, you're going to start arresting individuals that either don't build an obstacle properly or as they quoted, shoddy construction. But it might also be a little bit different when you think about the fact that that construction company wasn't licensed in Louisiana, right? So that's something that they obviously should have researched and put effort into making sure that they could actually work there. That's kind of a big deal, I would imagine.
That would be a huge deal because that's liability.
Right. So, but again, the arrest warrant piece of this is really what gets to me. And I'm not a lawyer by any means, but do you really have to arrest individuals as much as that's why you have a company, right? The company is responsible, not individuals within the company itself.
Well, it depends. Do the individuals follow the protocol set by the company? Because it said that the protocols and procedures were there, but they weren't necessarily followed. And according to the warrants for the contractors are for negligent injuring, meaning shoddy work. But the arrest warrants for the employees were for both negligent injury and engaging in business of contracting without authority. So I think if you knowingly hire a contractor who's not licensed in the state that they're doing business in, you should know better than that. I don't care. And the company isn't necessarily, I'm sure somewhere they've said, they have to be licensed in the state you're doing work in. So the company wouldn't be liable for that. The individual person who chooses to ignore that would be liable for that, in my opinion.
And your insurance company is not going to pay out if you have an unlicensed contractor.
Right.
I remember when this happened, because some of the race director, race directors who were on my friends list had looked at photos, and they were blown away that this thing was built the way it was built. I mean, it had no supports. The angles it's at are kind of funky, and they were quite literally just held together with the strength of the bolt that joined the wood, with nothing else really
no cross bracing whatsoever.
No. And I remember at the time when it collapsed and people looking at the photos and kind of reverse engineering how it was built. And the general feeling then was, I'm amazed this didn't happen earlier. If this is how they've been building this thing, it's amazing it didn't happen earlier. This thing was just waiting to collapse.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's interesting. It's going to be something to watch. I mean, I know, again, the same race directors have said this is why safety, Spartan race especially, safety is huge for them. And while it's really frustrating when you're building, to have somebody come over and check your work every day, every stage, it's to stop this stuff from happening.
It's necessary, especially when you deal with volunteer crews.
Yeah.
Now, not everyone on a crew is a volunteer. There's no volunteers do everything on their own. They're always supervised by an employee of the company.
Well, and Spartan's one of the few places that actually has volunteers doing build. Most places do it all in-house.
Yeah, I was going to say, and this was years ago, obviously, so I'm sure it could have changed, but when we were at Amesbury, I was doing a build day, and I'm building the actual wall, and I'm like, who are they to trust me to build a wall that, 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 people are gonna climb over? So I hope I'm doing this right. I don't know. Is this where the screw goes? Whatever.
Be fine.
So, no, it looks good. Let's go with that. I mean, to be honest, it's going to mean companies obviously are going to have to pay more money for permitting, certifications, all the stuff that they took for granted. And we've seen races kind of take things for granted, whether it's going into areas that they thought they could and they didn't ask permission, but it just means it's time to button up your operation a little bit and make sure that everything's on the up and up, because you can be sure that if Warrior Dash is going back there, and I think I read somewhere that they are going back to Louisiana, but at a different venue.
Yes. A different parish, yeah.
They moved area.
You can be sure that somebody's showing up there to check on you, whether it's OSHA or the local authorities or somebody. So I don't know. At the same time, maybe it could be a good thing, right? We haven't seen a ton of obstacles fail. The only one I was a witness of was the A-frame cargo net at Battle Frog in Pittsburgh a couple years ago, but just looking at that thing, I didn't want to climb over it as it was. I mean, the elite man ran out and it just immediately collapsed as soon as they got up on it.
Well, this comes back to, as athletes, you're responsible for your own safety. If you see an obstacle that you don't like or trust, I've only ever had to do that once, also at a Battle Frog. They had a they had a gut check style obstacle that was built out of one solid piece, meaning, it was just self-contained. And every time anyone hit the back beam, the whole thing rocked with their weight. And it was just dumping people off left, right, and center. And I walked right by it. But cast your mind back to the 2011, 2012 era.
Rebel Race.
Rebel Race.
Friends don't let friends do Rebel Race.
They went down in
sale,
infamy. Infamous for their horrendously built obstacles that people, at the time the OCR space was different and people didn't have as much experience or knowledge, but people were doing obstacles that, in hindsight, holy shit. How did they not kill someone? There were 2 obstacles
that day that I took one look at and said, nope, not worth it. And I was standing right next to one, less than a foot away from one that had a catastrophic failure.
Yeah. You dumped somebody into a very deep pit. Yeah. Friends don't let friends do Rebel Race or Rebel Race-like races. There you go.
That's right. So, hopefully what'll come out of this is some safety requirements.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's unreasonable that you have a safety inspector for some of these things. I mean, granted, some of them probably, you don't need a safety inspector for a barbed wire crawl. You don't need a safety inspector for carries, for, a lot of different things. But when you're talking about builds with wood where you've got significant amount of weight up and off the ground, then I don't think a safety inspection is unreasonable.
No, even a carry or a barbed wire crawl, you still have to have a standard.
A standard, yes, but I wouldn't say that you would need an inspector to come out and inspect it.
I feel like if a safety inspector inspected a barbed wire crawl, they'd go, "This whole thing isn't safe. What do you do?"
Nope.
So, yeah, you're done with this. So it's all going to be the inflatable 5K from here on out.
And even that's going to be deflated.
Yeah.
Should we talk about what's coming up next? We're approaching the hour.
Yes.
So there are 2 races coming up. So for me personally, I'm heading to Vegas next week, and I'm hoping I can have a quick turnaround from getting home and getting up to the 24 hours at Shale Hill.
Yay!
However many of the 24 hours are left by the time I arrive. So I'll go out and get a couple laps and camp the Saturday night. Now, you're doing that as well, right, Sandy?
Yes, absolutely.
Are you camping Saturday night racing Saturday night? I think everyone will be.
Yeah.
I haven't really thought about it, whether the nighttime hours were Friday or Saturday, but it makes sense.
The nighttime hours are Saturday, so it runs Saturday into Sunday. Cool. I cannot specifically say what time it starts on Saturday because that's not something I've looked up yet. Yep. It might be 10 to 10, it might be noon to noon, it might be 2 to 2. I'll try and look that up real quick right now.
Well, that's my next race, or at least my next however many hours left race. But you're going to drive right on past it and carry on north. Right, Josh?
I'm going to the Great White North, our neighbors to the north. I'm going to Quebec City for the Ultra Beast there. And it's funny, if you heard me after my 7 laps of fit the other day, I said this has fully satisfied my my desire for long distance racing events, and I was ready to pull the plug on the rest of my Ultra Beasts for the year, but I can't switch out of them, so now I'm stuck with the decision that I made.
Now you're stuck.
So yeah, I'll be in Quebec City, but I'll tell you, I'm going to skip over it because we've talked about that already. Yep. I'm getting more and more excited to go to Texas for the U.S. Championships. The more I'm seeing Adrian and team post about, the events and the obstacles that are showing up there. We'll obviously have to do a show leading up to it and after it, but I can't wait to get down to swampy, warm, hot Texas. Yeah. So the
if
projected,
you thought fit was hot.
Yeah, the projected temperature is 95 degrees on Labor Day weekend. So, so no thanks. Josh is coming back lobster red from so
expect
but yeah, I'm super
with
excited.
High humidity too.
Oh yeah. So busy few weeks. Quebec, we got Shale Hill next weekend, the U.S. Championships the weekend after that. We get a week off and a reprieve before Killington. 3 weeks after that, we go to Canada for the World. So we're getting into prime time World Championship season.
Yes.
So,
if you are still listening, go and check out the last episode 50, because that was quite a cool episode. And let us know what you want to hear. It's a busy race season. Do you want us to keep talking about the races, the news? What do you want to talk about? What do you want us to talk about?
Exactly.
Let us know. You see any of us on a course, come say hi.
And,
which continues to freak me out. I still have people come up and go, "Oh, I listened to your podcast," which is very, very.
So everybody go
surreal.
Find Sandy. We'll put a picture of her in the show notes so you can find her.
Mama hen on the back of my shirt. You see a mama hen, it's me.
Yep. I had somebody at Fit say, "Hey, you're Josh." I said, "I'm Josh." They go, "Podcast Josh." I'm like, "Podcast Josh." That's me. Yep.
Nice.
All right. We got an hour in. It's a good time to call it quits. We'll move on and we'll talk to everybody in a week or two after Shale Hill. We'll do a post Shale Hill and Quebec show and
awesome.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
All right, guys.
Sounds very
good.
good. Thank you all for listening.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening. Every episode, we're trying to bring you the latest news, the latest interviews, the latest opinions on OCR, especially as it affects New England, the New England Spartans. We can't do that without your feedback. We need to hear from you guys. You can reach out to us really easily via Facebook. We have a Facebook page for the Any Spartan Show. We also have the Facebook page for Any Spartans, and sending us a message through either of those will get to the right people. But we need to hear from you. What's working? What's not working? What do you enjoy? Again, I thank you for listening. These shows are a lot of fun to put together. We have, obviously, resources all over the place for you. Go to our website, anyspartans.com. Hop in our Facebook group and join the community if you have not done so already. And once again, I thank you for spending some time with us.